I am proud to present to you for induction into the Ohio State University Athletics Hall of Fame, Tommy Rowlands.
Thanks for the wonderful introduction. I made some notes here that I'm going to keep track of, but I'd like to congratulate all the other inductees into the Hall of Fame. Much like my time at Ohio State, I have spent the better part of this evening inspired by your achievements and your story. It is humbling to share the evening with all of you. I grew up 6 miles from Ohio Stadium, and when I was a kid, during home games, when halftime would begin, my dad would throw me in the car and we'd crash the gates for the second half. You could do that back then. I don't think they'd allow that anymore. So one of my greatest childhood memories is when he took me to the second half of the USC-Ohio State game in 1990. Coach Cooper, I'm sure you remember this, but they ended up canceling the game due to extreme lightning. The crowd was going bananas and people were going nuts in the pouring rain, and the student section was just out of their minds begging for the game to continue because we lost. And my dad and I sat in our raincoats on a track in the stadium and stayed all the way until both teams were off the field. Being a young child, I just thought it was cool to stand in the rain with a crazy group of people and losing their minds. And I think it was moments like that, even at the age of 9, I realized I was a sucker for Buckeye Nation. Growing up in Columbus wearing the scarlet and gray is every kid's dream. And it was certainly mine because of moments like that. Unfortunately, I never saw any action on the gridiron after the 7th grade. My dad was 5'11", and I wasn't a very big kid, so my parents didn't see the point of advocating for me to be somebody else's tackling dummy. Instead of running out of that tunnel to play in front of 100,000 screaming fans every Saturday, they thought it'd be better off wrestling in leotards with other guys in front of a couple hundred people twice a week. At least they were right on how small I ended up being. In all seriousness, my parents' intent was to have their kids participate in sports as a teaching tool, a vehicle to prepare my sisters and I for life. And through wrestling, I have experienced adversity, triumph, failure, discipline, and so many other buzzwords that we've used this evening to describe our experiences in sports. But simply put, wrestling has shaped me. It shaped me because, to Scooney's point, the village of people that raised me in wrestling helped me view the sport through a lens that has allowed me to transition these attributes of the sport to every aspect of my life. Because of their willingness to help me, whether it be as a father, husband, friend, brother, son, businessman, the merits of wrestling are always alive inside of me. It's difficult to thank so many people for making you who you are. It's like trying to explain to someone how much you love your kids. There are no words. Jim Edwards was my personal coach until I was 18 years old. He made the sport fun for me. He knew how to make a really tough sport fun to do. And that's huge for a kid. I think kids need to be happy before they learn how to persevere. Kenny Ramsey was my college coach, and he believed in me before I believed in me. He trained with me in grade school, went on vacations with my family, and helped me before anyone knew I would be able to wrestle in the Big Ten. My dad coached Kenny in high school, and we have pictures of Kenny holding me when I was a baby. And I felt the need to bring that up to prove that we have a long-standing relationship so NCAA doesn't come scaling down the walls and take Kenny and I away for those vacation comments. Mitch Clark trained with me every day for 5 years. And like clockwork, he was there. And he wasn't a student athlete. He wasn't training for the Olympics. He was my coach. And when you train with someone in wrestling, you're essentially fighting with them. And I was a fierce competitor, and I wanted to be great in what I did, and I needed someone to match that fire for me to accomplish my goals. And I'm forever indebted to have someone that was my size and weight that brought that intensity to the wrestling room every day. And that was huge in my development, critical in my success. And Russ Hellickson was my head coach at Ohio State. He's here tonight. And he was like a second father to me. And I hesitate in saying something like that because I've always felt like that reference put a negative spin on your real father or your first father. And that's not the case at all. And I'm going to get to that. But at any rate, Russ was a second father for me because at the most vulnerable and impressionable age at any young man's life, Russ was a perfect reflection and example of everything I had been taught at my home by my parents. A man that cares about people, wins with class, loses with dignity, and immerses himself in whatever endeavor he finds worth pursuing. A man that is driven to succeed but will never compromise his integrity or his character to win. A man that thinks of others first and himself last. A leader. He was an extension of every good thing I've ever been taught, but in the form of an international wrestling icon. I believed in everything that he told me, other than when he had us run on Friday and Saturday night at 11 p.m. for a year. He said running at that time of night was proven to be physiologically better than any other time of the day. Russ, I wish you would just admit that you're trying to keep us off of High Street. I get it. I don't find it coincidental that I've always been surrounded by great people. That's because my parents are great people. They surrounded their children with everything they needed. I didn't have to overcome anything in the home I was brought up in. I had everything I needed and more. I'm privileged and I am lucky. I wouldn't be who I am if my mom and dad didn't devote every ounce of their existence to their children. It's difficult to describe other than to simply say thank you for making my sisters and I your number one priority 100% of the time. Without the two of you, I don't know where I would be or who I would be. Instead, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly where I am. And I know exactly where I want to go. Thank you guys. I love you. And lastly, my wife, Elizabeth, who was my girlfriend at the time, during my time at Ohio State. I've never met a more selfless person in my life. She was a successful athlete in her own right, an all-SEC soccer player at the University of Kentucky, and she's wearing blue tonight, by the way. That wasn't on purpose. She understood my focus. She shared me with wrestling. She shared me with my Olympic dream. She made me better, and she still does every day. She's the leader of our family. She played a good chunk of her soccer career as a midfielder. I don't know much about soccer, but from what I gather, the midfielder is kind of the distribution manager of the ball when the team has possession. And essentially, they make everyone around them look better by giving them perfect tools and resources to advance the position or score. And my wife is no different from my kids and I. She enables us to be better than we think we can be, and she does it very gracefully. I love you. There's so many other people I want to thank, and in the effort to save some time, I know it's been a long night for all of us. I don't want to provide a narrative for every single person, but I thought I'd name some names of people that have had a tremendous impact on me, and without them I wouldn't be here tonight. Mickey Ballmer, Moran Karchalava, Ross Thatcher, Tom Ryan, Lou Roselli, my best friends who are also my teammates from Ohio State, Bob Hanline, and my sisters who were there for me every step of the way and believed in what I was doing, and were three of the most supportive people I've ever had in my life.